The luxury tourist thought the Swiss guards were just ornamental figures in colorful uniforms, until she planted herself directly in Pope Francis's ceremonial path, smirking and refusing to move despite countless warnings. When the disciplined formation approached without hesitation, she learned the painful truth that these weren't costume performers but sworn protectors of the Holy Father. Here's what happened when centuries of sacred duty met modern entitlement. The sharp click of designer heels against ancient Vatican stones announced Victoria Sterling's arrival before she rounded the corner into St. Peter's Square. Her meticulously styled blonde hair and luxury athleisure wear marked her as someone accustomed to special treatment, pushing past the reverent crowds gathered for the Pope's weekly Angelus address. "Excuse me," she barked, shouldering past an elderly Italian couple who had been patiently waiting with their rosaries. "Some of us have schedules to keep." Her designer handbag swung carelessly, nearly striking a young child, who quickly ducked behind his mother. The morning sun cast long shadows across the square as thousands of faithful gathered in respectful silence, their attention focused on the Apostolic Palace balcony, where Pope Francis would soon appear. "The viewing area forms behind the barriers, Signora," a Vatican attendant politely informed her, gesturing toward the orderly crowd of pilgrims and tourists. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand cut through the air, dismissing his words before they could register. "Do you know who I am? I'm not standing behind ropes like some common tourist." The attendant maintained his professional composure. "For security reasons, all visitors must respect the designated areas during papal..." "Security reasons?" Victoria's laugh was sharp. "For what? Those toy soldiers in their circus costumes?" She gestured dismissively toward the approaching Swiss guards, their distinctive blue, red, and yellow uniforms a stark contrast against the Renaissance architecture. To her, they were nothing more than an elaborate tourist attraction, colorful props in Vatican theater. A young family from Ohio tried to edge past her toward their designated viewing area, their excited children pointing at the papal balcony. Victoria planted herself firmly in their path, directly on the ceremonial route where the Swiss guards would soon escort Pope Francis. "I wasn't finished here," she announced, as if St. Peter's Square were her private photo studio. "This is the perfect spot for my shot." "Please, ma'am," the father began gently. "The children have been waiting since dawn to see the Holy Father." "Well, they can wait a bit longer, can't they?" Victoria's voice dripped with condescension. In the distance, the solemn notes of a church bell drifted across the square. Pope Francis was preparing for his procession, and the Swiss guards were taking their positions. But Victoria Sterling had already decided that papal protocol would bend to her schedule. As the ceremonial preparations intensified, tourists and pilgrims began shifting respectfully behind the barriers, cameras ready to capture the Holy Father's appearance. Victoria, however, remained planted in her chosen spot, now directly blocking the path where Pope Francis and his Swiss Guard escort would soon pass. An American veteran approached, his jacket adorned with campaign ribbons from Iraq and Afghanistan. His weathered face carried the gravity of someone who understood military protocol. "Ma'am, you'll need to step back. The Swiss guards will be escorting the Holy Father through here shortly." "Oh, please," Victoria rolled her eyes. "They can walk around me. I'm not moving until I get my perfect shot." She held up her phone, angling it for shots while ignoring the growing concern around her. The morning light cast dramatic shadows across the colonnade, creating what she considered ideal lighting conditions. The veteran's expression tightened. "Ma'am, these aren't actors. The Swiss Guard are real soldiers, the Pope's personal protection force. They've been defending the Holy Father for over 5 centuries. Defending?" Victoria's laugh carried across the square. "From what? Tourists with cameras?" A murmur of disapproval rippled through the crowd. The veteran's companion placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Save your breath, Robert. Some people have to learn respect the hard way." In the distance, the measured footsteps of the Swiss guard could be heard echoing off the ancient stones. Leading the papal escort was Guard Matteo Koller, his bearing perfect, his dedication evident in every disciplined step. Even from afar, his presence commanded the kind of respect that made most visitors instinctively step aside. "Final warning," a Gendarmeria Vaticana officer called out, his tone urgent. "Clear the ceremonial path immediately." The Swiss Guard cannot deviate from their assigned route. For heaven's sake, Victoria's voice rose, drawing more attention. This is a public square. I have every right to stand wherever I want. What are they going to do? March through me? The Swiss Guard formation rounded the corner, their ceremonial halberds gleaming in the morning sun. Behind them, Pope Francis moved with quiet dignity, his white cassock a beacon of peaceful authority. The disciplined precision of their movement made it clear this was no tourist performance. These were soldiers fulfilling their sacred duty. Please, a mother with young children pleaded, you're going to get hurt. They're not allowed to stop or change course during a papal procession. Victoria's response was to plant her feet more firmly, raising her phone higher. Then they better learn some customer service skills. I'm not moving for anyone in a costume, no matter how colorful their little outfits are. The ceremonial drums grew louder, the marching more distinct. The crowd had respectfully cleared the path, leaving Victoria isolated in a space that would soon be filled by the advancing Swiss Guard escort. Pope Francis continued his approach, unaware of the brewing confrontation ahead. The veteran shook his head slowly, recognition in his eyes. He'd seen entitled behavior collide with military discipline before, and he knew exactly how it would end. Guard Koller's eyes, trained through years of service to assess threats instantly, had already registered the obstruction in their path. But his step never faltered. His formation never wavered. The Swiss Guard moved forward with the inevitability of centuries-old tradition, closing the distance between sacred ceremony and secular arrogance. This is your absolute final warning. The Gendarmerie officer's voice carried real urgency now. Clear the path or you will be removed by force. Try it, Victoria shot back, her stance becoming more defiant. I'd love to see you explain that to my lawyers. She raised her phone higher, completely oblivious to the fact that she was about to become an object lesson in respect, one that would be far more memorable than any photograph she hoped to capture. The distance between Koller's formation and Victoria had shrunk to mere yards, yet she remained planted in the papal procession route. Her phone held high with defiant determination. The rhythmic sound of their boots against the ancient stones seemed to make the very air vibrate with sacred authority. Make way for His Holiness, the command rang out clear and sharp across St. Peter's Square. Still, Victoria stood her ground, a smirk playing across her lips as she watched the approaching formation through her phone screen. Behind them, Pope Francis continued his dignified approach, his presence lending weight to the unfolding confrontation. Last chance, someone called from the crowd. They're not going to stop for anyone. Oh, please, Victoria called back without lowering her phone. This isn't some military base. This is a tourist destination, and I'm a paying visitor. She raised her voice, directing it at the approaching guards. You work for the church, remember? Time to learn some basic customer. The collision, when it came, was precise and controlled yet forceful enough to send Victoria sprawling. Guard Koller's shoulder check, executed with military precision, struck her just hard enough to remove her from the papal procession path. Her designer sunglasses flew in one direction, her phone in another, as she landed unceremoniously on the ancient stones. But the lesson wasn't finished. As the formation continued their unwavering march, Koller's boot came down squarely on Victoria's outstretched hand, the one she'd flung out to break her fall. The impact wasn't cruel or deliberate. It was simply the inevitable result of an unstoppable force encountering someone who refused to move. Her scream of outrage and pain shattered the reverent atmosphere of St. Peter's Square. You broke my hand! Victoria scrambled to her knees, cradling her injured hand against her chest. He assaulted me? Did everyone see that? The Swiss Guard marched on, their formation unbroken, their discipline unwavering. Koller's eyes remained fixed forward, his bearing as perfect as if nothing had occurred. Behind them, Pope Francis continued his procession, his peaceful presence a stark contrast to the chaos Victoria had created. Victoria struggled to her feet, her designer outfit now bearing dirt marks from the ancient stones. The papal procession moved forward with the dignity and purpose of 2 millennia of tradition, completely ignoring her outrage. How dare you! Her voice rose to a shriek as the formation continued their precise march. Stop right now! I'm talking to you! The American veteran stepped forward, offering a steadying hand which she angrily pushed away. I want the police! That man attacked me! Her face had turned an alarming shade of red as she pointed at the retreating Swiss Guard formation. He used excessive force. I could have been killed. A Gendarmeria Vaticana officer approached, his tone professionally neutral, despite having witnessed her ignore multiple warnings. Signora, you were advised repeatedly to clear the ceremonial path. The Swiss Guard are authorized to remove any obstacles during papal processions. Obstacles? Victoria's voice reached a new pitch of indignation. I am a tax-paying visitor. That man assaulted me. He stomped on my hand deliberately. The morning sun continued to shine down on St. Peter's Square as Pope Francis reached the balcony, beginning his weekly Angelus address to the faithful below. His words of peace and blessing provided a surreal backdrop to Victoria's continued outrage. I want his name. Matteo, whatever his name is. My husband's lawyers will make sure he never works in uniform again. The Swiss Guard formation had reached their positions, executing a perfect turn with precision that came from countless hours of drill. Guard Koller stood at his assigned post, his bearing perfect, his dedication to protecting the Holy Father unshaken by the minor disturbance he'd handled. Signora, the Gendarmeria officer tried again, if you wish to file a formal complaint, we can direct you to the proper channels. Complaint? Victoria snatched up her fallen phone, checking it frantically for damage. I'm going to do more than complain. I'm going to sue. Everyone will know how these thugs in fancy dress treat innocent women. She jabbed a finger toward Koller's position. That man is dangerous. He should be in prison, not playing soldier at a tourist attraction. The veteran exchanged glances with his companion, both men recognizing the familiar pattern of entitled behavior meeting immovable authority. They'd seen it before. Civilian arrogance colliding with military discipline, always with the same inevitable result. Two officers from the Polizia di Stato had arrived on scene, their expressions suggesting they dealt with similar incidents regularly. The female officer stepped forward, notebook ready. Signora, I'm Officer Elena Russo. Please lower your voice and explain what happened. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Victoria's voice was borderline hysterical. Your precious guard attacked an innocent woman. He body slammed me and stomped on my hand. I want him arrested immediately. The male officer was already speaking with witnesses. The American veteran and several tourists who had captured the incident provided their accounts, painting a markedly different picture than Victoria's version of events. Above them, Pope Francis's voice carried across the square in multiple languages, his weekly blessing a reminder of the sacred purpose underlying all Vatican protocol. The irony of the moment. A message of peace and humility delivered while Victoria raged about her injured pride was lost on no one but herself. Signora, Officer Russo tried again, multiple witnesses state you were warned repeatedly to clear the papal procession route. Papal procession route? Victoria spat the words like they were poison. This isn't some military zone. This is a tourist attraction. I paid good money to visit this overpriced church. She fumbled with her phone, her injured hand shaking with rage. I've got lawyers on speed dial, the best lawyers in Rome. When I'm done, that guard will be lucky to find work as a mall security guard. Her fingers flew across the screen. Wait until CNN hears about this. Swiss Guard attacks innocent tourist. That'll make headlines worldwide. Officer Antonio Ricci rejoined them, his notepad filled with witness statements. Mrs. Sterling, according to multiple accounts, you were given at least 6 separate warnings to clear the path. The Swiss Guard's actions were within established Vatican security protocols. Protocols? Victoria's face flushed an even deeper shade of red. I am not some security threat. I'm a paying visitor. Stop calling it protocols like it's some real military operation. She gestured wildly at the Swiss Guard positions. They're tourist attractions, walking around in those ridiculous uniforms, pretending to be soldiers. They are soldiers, ma'am, the American veteran interjected, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had served. Active duty military personnel performing their sworn duties. The ceremonial aspect doesn't change that fundamental fact. Did I ask for your opinion? Victoria rounded on him. Why don't you go play dress-up with them since you're so fond of their little parade? Above them, Pope Francis concluded his Angelus address, his final blessing echoing across the square. The crowd of faithful began to disperse, many casting disapproving glances at the continuing disturbance below. Are you going to arrest him or not? Victoria demanded, turning back to the officers. Officer Russo's voice remained professionally neutral. Signora, Based on witness statements and your own admission of refusing to clear a designated security route, we will not be arresting Guard Koller. However, we do need to discuss your actions today. My actions? Victoria's screech echoed off the Vatican walls. I was assaulted! Look at my hand! Look at my clothes! She gestured at the dirt marks on her designer outfit. This outfit cost more than that guard makes in a year. I demand compensation. A small crowd of tourists maintained a respectful distance, watching the scene unfold. Several children stayed close to their parents, while others openly stared at the spectacle of entitlement meeting its match. This isn't over, Victoria declared, jabbing her phone toward Koller's immobile form. You hear me? I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of thugs they have protecting this place. The sharp sound of boots on stone announced the arrival of Commander Stefan Mueller, his bearing carrying the unmistakable authority of a career soldier. The polished insignia of the Swiss Guard Command gleamed in the afternoon sun as he surveyed the scene, taking in Victoria's disheveled state and the resigned expressions of the Italian officers. What seems to be the problem here? His voice, though quiet, carried the kind of authority that made everyone except Victoria stand straighter. Finally! Victoria thrust herself forward, her injured hand held dramatically against her chest. Someone in charge. I demand the immediate arrest of Guard Matteo Koller for assault and battery. Mrs. Sterling, Commander Mueller cut through her tirade with military precision. I've already been briefed on the situation. My guard acted entirely within Vatican security protocol when you refused to clear the papal procession route after multiple warnings. Protocol. Victoria's voice rose again. He body-checked me to the ground. He stomped on my hand. What kind of protocol allows assault? The commander's face remained impassive. The Swiss Guard are active military personnel operating under strict orders to protect His Holiness. They are authorized to remove obstacles from secured routes using necessary force. Are you actually defending this? Victoria's face contorted with rage. Do you have any idea who my husband is? Your husband's identity is irrelevant to this situation, Signora, Commander Mueller interrupted, his tone suggesting he'd dealt with similar threats before. What is relevant is your deliberate interference with a military unit protecting the Holy Father. Officer Russo stepped forward, notebook still ready. Commander, we've collected statements from multiple witnesses confirming Mrs. Sterling ignored repeated warnings and deliberately positioned herself in the guard's path. Of course, they're all backing each other up. Victoria's voice echoed off St. Peter's colonnade. This whole place is just one big boys' club with fancy uniforms. She gestured wildly at the surrounding Vatican. Well, let me tell you something, Commander, whatever your name is. This isn't some military dictatorship. You can't just assault civilians because they're in your precious path. Commander Mueller's response was measured, each word carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. Mrs. Sterling, the Swiss Guard are not a tourist attraction. They are serving military personnel performing vital security duties for His Holiness. Their ceremonial role does not diminish their authority or responsibility to maintain secured routes. Security duties? Victoria's laugh was bitter. Please, I've seen more security at my local Starbucks. At least they know how to treat paying customers with respect. This is not a commercial establishment, Signora. Commander Mueller's voice took on an edge of steel. This is the spiritual center of the Catholic Church and the sovereign territory of Vatican City. The guards you see are combat-trained soldiers who have earned their positions through years of dedicated service. He gestured toward Koller's position. Guard Koller himself served 2 deployments with Swiss military forces in peacekeeping operations before being selected for papal protection duty. Oh, spare me the military fairy tales, Victoria snapped, waving her phone like a weapon. Wait until the media hears about this. Combat-trained soldier attacks defenseless woman. That'll look great in your headlines. Commander Mueller clasped his hands behind his back, his posture impeccable. Mrs. Sterling, perhaps you're unaware that interfering with papal security is a criminal offense under Vatican law and Italian jurisdiction. He turned to the officers. Officer Russo, Officer Ricci, I believe this falls under your authority now. You can't be serious. Victoria's voice faltered slightly for the first time. You're actually going to charge me after one of your toy soldiers attacked me? Guard Koller executed his duty exactly as trained, the commander continued, unmoved. The fact that you suffered minor injuries as a direct result of your refusal to comply with lawful security orders is unfortunate, but entirely of your own making. Victoria's face had turned purple with rage. Lawful orders? I'm a civilian. You can't give me orders. This is assault, plain and simple. Officer Russo. Commander Mueller turned to the policewoman, effectively dismissing Victoria's protests. I'll have our security office forward you the relevant footage and incident reports. I trust you can handle things from here. This is outrageous. Victoria's voice cracked with fury. You can't just ignore me. I demand to speak to whoever's in charge of this entire operation. Commander Mueller turned back to her, his expression unchanged, but his voice carrying final authority. Mrs. Sterling, this incident is now in the hands of Italian law enforcement. I suggest you direct your complaints through proper legal channels. He paused, his gaze steady. In the meantime, I recommend you reflect on the seriousness of interfering with those sworn to protect His Holiness. Right then, Mrs. Sterling. Officer Russo stepped forward, her demeanor professional but firm. You'll need to accompany us to the station to formally process this incident. Process? Victoria's eyes widened with the disbelief. Process what? I'm the victim here. You have two options, Officer Ricci interjected. Come voluntarily to provide your statement, or we can formally arrest you for interfering with Vatican security and disturbing the peace. The American veteran stepped forward one last time. Ma'am, sometimes accepting responsibility for our actions is the wiser choice. Responsibility? Victoria clutched her designer bag like a shield. The only one responsible is that thug in the colorful costume. She stopped mid-sentence as Officer Russo produced handcuffs. You wouldn't dare. Mrs. Sterling. Commander Mueller spoke one final time, his voice carrying the weight of generations of Swiss military tradition. Your actions today demonstrated profound disrespect not just for the uniform, but for the principles it represents. These guards are not performers in a tourist show. They are soldiers who have sworn sacred oaths to protect the Vicar of Christ, who stand ready to give their lives in his defense. The ceremony you mock is built on centuries of sacrifice and unwavering devotion. I don't care about your ceremonies. Victoria's voice took on a note of desperation. This is assault, battery, false arrest. Mrs. Sterling, Officer Russo cut in smoothly. Every action taken today was fully within the law. Now, shall we proceed to the station, or do I need to read you your rights? Victoria looked around wildly but found no sympathy in the surrounding faces. The crowd that had witnessed her behavior watched in silence as she was led away, still protesting loudly about lawyers and media revenge. As her voice faded into the distance, Commander Mueller turned to address the remaining tourists, his voice carrying clear authority. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience during this incident. Please remember that while we welcome visitors to witness our traditions, these are not mere performances. Every Swiss Guard you see has earned his position through years of dedicated service. They represent the finest traditions of military excellence and sacred duty. We expect all visitors to respect both their mission and their authority. As the crowd began to disperse, the two American veterans exchanged knowing looks. The older one touched his campaign ribbons thoughtfully. Some people never learn the difference between authority and entertainment, he mused. His companion nodded, watching as Victoria's protests finally disappeared around the corner. Pride goes before the fall, and some falls leave deeper impressions than others. Guard Koller remained at his post, his bearing perfect, his discipline unshaken by the incident. The afternoon sun glinted off his ceremonial uniform and polished boots, the same boots that had taught an entitled tourist a lesson about respect she wouldn't soon forget. Above them all, the golden cross atop St. Peter's Basilica caught the light, a reminder that some institutions endure not because they're relics of the past, but because they represent timeless values of duty, honor, and sacred service. In the peaceful aftermath, St. Peter's Square returned to its normal rhythm of prayer and reverence. The ancient stones had witnessed yet another clash between secular arrogance and sacred authority, with the outcome as inevitable as it was educational. Some lessons, it seems, can only be learned the hard way, especially when centuries of disciplined devotion meet modern entitlement head-on.